Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. Greetings, my friends, and salutation. Welcome again to the Richard James Show. Again, we hopefully will have a very, very meaningful broadcast. I'm sure it will be. We like to do a little something different. You know, one of the things that I really think is important is history. It's because, there's things that have occurred in the past that create situations for us today, things that happen today. We have a better understanding if we look past what happened in yesterday. Now, reason I mention that, I'm going to lift up two sisters today. Actually, the major lift up will be for a woman by the name of Angela Davis. But we're also going to lift up Fania Davis. They're both doctors. And Fania is an attorney. Angela is a college professor. And they were two of the greatest female activists and leaders in the history of our countries. Uh, More well known was Angela Davis. Angela participated in activities that really, really charted the direction of the civil rights movement back in the 60s. Back in the 60s, yours truly, who is now a old man, was heavily involved in the civil rights struggle. During that era, Angela Davis was also heavily involved in the civil rights struggle. She was born in Birmingham, Alabama, uh, in 1944. I was born in Georgia, state of Georgia, Thomasville, Georgia, in the year 1941. So as you can see, I'm several years older than she is, but we're both in our late. She's in her late 70s, and I'm 80 years old at this particular time. Well, what happened was, it's a long, long, long story, and these videos will really explain some of it. But let me tell you who I had direct contact with and who I knew very well was Fania Davis. Fania was a wonderful, brilliant, very conscientious human being. Now, when I graduated from college, no, excuse me, from high school, not college, uh, I looked for jobs that would help me to gather enough money for tuition and to be able to go to college. I was a poor boy. My father was a hard-working, brilliant man with a second grade education. So my father had to work hard to help us. So he was not in a position with three boys to be able to pay for our education. So what we did, we went out and we worked, and we stomped the dust, as folks would say. We worked and we worked hard. I got a position as a busboy dishwasher in the cafeteria kitchen of Swarthmore College. At the time, Swarthmore was one of the greatest and best small colleges in the nation. Uh, Small, but academically on time. It was a wonderful, wonderful school. And during that period of time, when I was busting suds, we would say, or washing dishes or cleaning tables, I met some of the students there at the college and became very friendly with them. And one of the students that I met and became very friendly, very close to, was a young lady by the name of Fania Davis. And I think Fania is probably 4 or 5 years younger than I was. I was about, I guess I was around 21 or 22. At any rate, we became very, very close friends. And there was an organization on campus, well known for its political activities, the Students for a Democratic Society. Students for a Democratic Society. And I worked very closely with some of those folks. One of the leaders of that organization was a man by the name of Ollie Fine. Right now, he's Doctor Ollie Fine, and he was married to another young lady that was involved in the organization, uh, um, who he later married. Uh, it was a wonderful, wonderful organization. But at that time, I got to know Fania Davis. And in the meanwhile, uh, Angela Davis was getting involved in some of the great organizations, activist organizations of her day. Sometimes feminist organizations, uh, political organizations. She also worked very closely with individuals who were incarcerated, who were in prison. There was a group of young men called the Soldat Brothers that she worked very with. And there was another gentleman by the name of George Jackson, who she became very close to. Well, anyway, uh, according to historical records, these young men uh, wanted George Jackson. They were involved in a shootout in the courthouse. They wanted to break out of prison and leave, what have you. And Angela Davis was blamed for somehow being supportive of those people. She wasn't there at the shootout. She knew these guys, corresponding with them, but was in no way involved in what took place. She loved George Jackson. She thought he was a wonderful, wonderful young man trying to do some good things. But that breakout was not the smartest or the best thing to do, as far as I'm concerned. But what they did, because they really turned around people's careers and lives and that kind of thing, and it cost them their lives because the individuals that were involved in the shootout wind up deceased. And then they want the FBI under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, who was a right wing conservative, blamed Angela Davis, called her a communist. Now, back in those days, uh, communism, which is a political philosophy, uh, was really stamped as being evil and being anti-American. The truth of the matter is, communism and socialism is very much the same, very much the same. And our government, even though we applaud, and I applaud, what we call the ability to be able to do business and to make a profit. So people call it capitalism. Capitalism, and that's the kind of system that we have. But the truth of the matter is it's not a pure capitalist system because we have things like Social Security, which everyone who works is involved in. Social Security is a socialist concept. As a matter of fact, many of the conservatives have tried to kill and downsize socialism. What happened was under the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Roosevelt put in socialism measures in order to bring our country back from the brink of oppression. We were an oppressed nation. Millions of people were out of work. Some people were starving, were not able to eat. So Franklin Roosevelt came with a broad scope of program, socialist program. He began to send foods to people who meet the income criteria. In fact, my family received cheese and spam and food that kept us going and kept us alive. That's socialism. Uh, that's this kind of theory that folks say they hate. Now we had a man who was director of the FBI, and who some of his concept was quite contradictory to some of the presidents he worked for, who did anything he could to be able to stop the development of socialist activities. J. Edgar Hoover. He worked for 8 presidents and did a lot to try to stop this trend. But in the meanwhile, you had presidents like JFK and his vice president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was a Southern, who believed in trying to do and say that is correct. Lyndon Baines signed into law the 1964 Civil Rights Act and worked to try to bring about change. Angela Davis joined a number of political organizations. She joined the Black Panther Party, who was not really a true revolutionary party, depending on your definition of revolution, but they were more demonstrative and figurative than actual. They would wear leather hats and leather jackets and carry guns, and this was symbol, a military kind of thing. Just the opposite of a man by the name of Mel King, who believed in nonviolence, lifting up the banner of peace and recognition, a man who believed in love, a man who believed, as Jesus said, if a man hits you on your right cheek, turn to him your left cheek. That's what he believed in. But the opposite of that was a military organization called the Black Panther Party. There were other nationalist kinds of organizations that existed. There was one called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And this committee, Angela became a part of. This was more of a peaceful revolution with SNCC. SNCC was an organization that encompasses people of all colors. As a matter of fact, there were quite a few white members of SNCC. SNCC was not a black organization; it was a student organization. And a man by the name of we call Stokely Carmichael was the leader of that organization, and later a man by the name of H. Rap Brown. But she joined a number of organizations, and because of her status and her uh, brilliance, she was cast as being a communist, being anti-American, and all of those foolish and ridiculous things, because we had a right-wing racist who was heading up the FBI at that point. And at that point, the FBI was basically white. You didn't have black agents, African American agents in the FBI. You had informants, but you did not have agents of color. And anyone who was in a leadership position in this country had their phones tapped, was constantly guarded and suspected. And one of those people was Angela Davis. So uh, at one point, because of the alleged involvement in this particular jail or courtroom shootout, uh, they put out a most wanted poster, and the FBI went after Angela Davis. Now, we're going to show you some videos in which some of these matters are being discussed, and you will see exactly what happened. And that we have two videos, and we're going to start out with a interview of Angela Davis.
I'm flabbergasted, nervous, in a great way, honored to have these two pillars of the community, living legacies, wisdom keepers, trailblazers, spiritual warriors, conscious disruptors, sacred mothers of our global lands, thought leaders, powerful visionaries, transcending generations. These women I have read about. These women have been in my household and they don't even know it. I'm talking about Dr. Angela Davis and Dr. Fania Davis. These people have been fighting and working for social justice for decades. They put their freedom on the line. They grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, where their friends were victims of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. They've been associated to the Black Panther Party, Communist Party. Their work has been countering the prison industrial complex, social restorative justice for Oakland youth, my hometown. And we have them on the air with us today. I want to welcome Dr. Angela Davis and Dr. Fania Davis to the show. Welcome. We are honored to have you here.
Welcome.
Absolutely.
We are honored to have you here. How are you, Dr. Angela? How are you? Dr. Angela Davis.
I'm doing good. How's everything with you?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing extremely well. I've been a big fan and follower of your work and of your journey. My mother used to work at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab over there at UC Berkeley.
Yes.
Yes, and for years, and she also did some work in the community in the soup kitchens back in the early days, and in the 70s. I'm a child of the 70s. I had a chance to go to some of these soup kitchens and work in the community and be a part of some of these programs. And that's how I was brought up, And so it's an honor to have you here. Dr. Fania Davis, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Well. And thank you for that beautiful praise song. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling really pumped up now.
Well, we got to call it like we see it. It's important that we recognize your work. I only wish we had more time, but I'll put in I'll make a request now, even beyond this conversation we'll have today. I would love to have you back on the show, and hopefully in person, or if or either on Zoom, so we can see each other.
It's
And
done.
Absolutely.
that's all I have to say. You see that, HB? It had to be. I got a little
I
juice
see
here. I
it.
got juice. I'm down with the Davis family. Y'all better stop
Yes.
playing with me. Uh, so I wanted to talk. A good friend of mine, Jussie Smollett, and I'll say that. Totally,
Okay.
totally
Absolutely.
transparent. It's a good friend of mine. I consider him a little
Mm-hmm.
brother. He's in a fight for his freedom. He's in a fight for his life. He's facing 6 counts of disorderly conduct of suspicion of making false reports to the Chicago Police Department.
Right.
This case has been ongoing for longer than I think Chicago's resources should have to be spent.
That's right.
And I remember,
Absolutely.
I think it's ludicrous, in my opinion, that Chicago has enough issues in the community to be focused on, other than this thing with Jussie Smollett. I remember there was an open letter in solidarity with Jussie Smollett that was written, and all those targeted by police misconduct that the both of you wrote, that you both of you signed. All right.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
And wrote. We wrote that.
Well,
Or,
Okay, go ahead.
we have been friends with the Smollett family for a very long time. As a matter of fact, Jussie's mom, Janet, was involved in the effort to save my life when I was facing the death penalty. And so we have supported Jussie from the outset. And I should also say that we've both been involved in efforts to reveal the racist repression of the Chicago Police Department. We see this whole effort as a way to once again attempt to legitimize the Chicago Police Department, and by extension, all police departments in this country.
When you, I know in the letter, you talked about some of the things that we've seen happen in the past with the Chicago Police Department. Activists who have been killed by the Chicago Police Department. When you look at what's happening, Dr. Fania Davis, with the way this trial is being ran, what is your view of it?
my view is that this is a trial for, in this trial rather, for an alleged hate crime hoax. Jussie is the real victim. Jussie, an openly gay black man who is a lover of humanity, who since a child has stood against all forms of injustice, is 3 times a victim. First, he's a victim of a racist, homophobic hate crime that did occur. Second, he's a victim of a racist, homophobic, and anti-activist frame-up. Third, and this in some ways is most hurtful for him, he's the victim of a ruthless character assassination and disinformation campaign. Unfortunately, so many swallowed the Kool-Aid by Chicago Police Department and uncritical media. And this has hurt him deeply on multiple levels, emotionally, reputationally, as well as materially, in terms of lost career opportunities and income, as his career was frozen for almost 3 years. This has been very, very difficult for him. It's been a real soul injury for him. And though he has endured great pain and suffering, he comes from a family like our family that has always stood up for truth and justice. He comes from a lineage of justice warriors. So in spite of all of this pain and suffering, he has not faltered. He remains determined to get the truth out at trial and be vindicated. And I am confident, having gotten running accounts of what's going on in the courtroom every day, I am confident that he will be. We had a good day yesterday on cross-examination. So this is a racist, homophobic, and anti-activist frame-up. This is a persecution and not a prosecution.
Why do you?
And I could talk a lot about credibility stuff, but yeah, I'll just stop there.
Go ahead, HB.
Hi, so both Dr. Davises. This is Heather. Thank you so much again. We are honored to have you, you both on the show today, joining us and to speak about this. What was mind-boggling to me and just maybe I'm wrong and I just don't get it, is that there were witnesses, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there were witnesses, neighbors who saw white men running with ropes and different things from a particular area. They gave statements, neighbors and different things. And from my understanding, this evidence was not allowed in court. How does something like that happen?
Well, actually, I think there's going to be some mention of one of those witnesses. One of those witnesses, the security guard at the Sheridan, who saw a white man running by, who was masked, um, right near the scene of the attack. He's going to testify. He should probably testify early next week. But did we hear that from Eddie
Okay.
Johnson, the then superintendent, when he was,
Superintendent.
engaged in his multiple media appearances, national media appearances? He was the one who led this disinformation campaign, really. And it's not surprising that he was fired not long after the Jussie Smollett case got started for lying. Um, so it's really, in many ways, a credibility contest. We know that a hate attack occurred, and the question is, who did it and why. And Jussie says that he was attacked because of his race and because of his sexual orientation. And the police department says that he was attacked. He made this all up, that this was a hate crime hoax that he engineered with these two brothers. So the question is, who's going to be more credible at trial? And I can talk a little bit later about all the credibility issues that the Osundairo brothers are going to have, or having actually, because they've already testified.
Yeah, and let me also say that we can't lose sight of the larger question. This is a pivotal moment in the history of this country. As a consequence of the responses to the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, the whole country is now aware of the structural racism of the police department, and there have been calls for the development of new forms of security. We do not need these, racist, repressive forces pretending to guarantee the safety of our communities. Now, in this particular case, what is at risk is not only Jussie Smollett and his life and his career, but what is at risk is the success that we've achieved in our efforts to unveil structural racism in this country. The Chicago Police Department has always been one of the worst police departments in the country. I can remember when Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were assassinated. And I can remember that had not it been for a few black members of the Chicago Police Department, we never would have found out what actually happened that night. And then, of course, we know about the murder of Laquan McDonald and how many years it took before the video was actually released and before we were able to see the behavior of the Chicago Police Department. And then, of course, we know about the torture of over 100 black men over the last decades by this same Chicago Police Department. Now, why should we now believe the Chicago Police Department when they bring these charges against Jussie Smollett? So I just want us to think not only about Jussie, who is a beautiful human being and whom I've known for a very long time, but I want us to think about what is at stake, our awareness, our collective consciousness of the need to dismantle police departments precisely because of this structural racism.
We got Dr. Angela Davis and Dr. Fania Davis with us. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was just going to add, Not only is beautiful a city as Chicago is, the CPD is considered the racist police terror capital of the country, if not the world. And not
Wow.
only did they engage in
Didn't
this
know that.
pattern and practice of,
I didn't know that.
sorry?
I didn't know that.
We didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
we
yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yep. Not only did they engage in this, have the police department over the decades engaged in this pattern and practice of all manner of abuse against black men, especially whether a character assassination as here or an actual assassination as in the Fred Hampton case that Angelo talked about, or the more recent Laquan McDonald case or the torture case. Not only did they engage in these heinous crimes, these crimes against humanity, but they engaged in an elaborate cover-up of their crime. And in Jussie's case, we see a cover-up, and a frame-up, an elaborate cover-up of an actual hate crime and an elaborate frame-up of a hate crime hoax. So this is, part of their pattern and practice that we have seen over the years. And it's, homophobic attack as well. During the actual hate crime, Jussie's attackers yelled racial and homophobic epithets, and the two Nigerian brothers who attacked him at the direction of a white person who we will see on video and who we will hear about when Jussie testifies and when the Sheridan security guard testifies. These guys were homophobes, and at the trial yesterday, they were cross-examined, or the older brother was cross-examined about his multiple just heinous tweets and text messages and other social media posts, homophobic slurs. And I want to also, I know I'm going on a little bit, but I want to talk about the political motivation here.
Okay.
A bit, if that's okay. So Jussie comes from a family of activists like, Angela and I do, and of course he's been engaged in consistently since he was a child against injustice, against racism, as Angela said, against police terror, homophobia, environmental injustice, poverty. He's contributed to, HBCUs and AIDS charities. And he has used, this is really important because it goes to the timing of this attack against him. In the 2018 midterms, he was stomping the pavement for anti-Trump candidates. He was calling Trump out at every opportunity.
Right.
He was in Georgia, for example, supporting Stacey Abrams. And this clearly got the attention of the racist supporters of Trump, and there are quite a few in the Chicago Police Department and in the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, which also has a lot of Trump supporters in the leadership. So it clearly got the attention of Trump associates, Trump, people who do his bidding. And so when he returned to Chicago from Georgia, he received this hate mail that had in the return address line MAGA, and inside was a drawing of a black man hanging from a tree. And I forgot exactly what the words were. But the actual physical attack occurred days later, right?
Yeah.
So the attack, and then, then the attack on
Let's also,
him with the racist
Fania, let's not forget that the current special prosecutor has defended Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, and other Trump associates.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The charges were dropped by
And
Kim Foxx.
that Trump himself explicitly denounced Jussie during his last year in office. So this is part of an effort of the conservative neo-fascist forces in this country to gain the ears of people who ought to be trying to push the country in a progressive direction.
Mm-hmm. We have Dr. Angela Davis with us, Dr. Fania Davis with us. We're talking about the case of Jussie Smollett, who's up on 6 counts of disorderly conduct of suspicion of making false reports to police, and they've been publicly open about their support of Jussie, but even bigger than that, what we're witnessing as a community and how the results of this trial can impact us all. Tracy G, you want to ask a question?
You know it. Queen, so grateful to have you guys on the line with us, especially speaking about um, pretty much a member of our family, Jussie. There's never been a time I've mentioned Jussie's name and the word love has been placed next to him. And at the
Mm,
same time, as much clarity that you guys are bringing, I mean, even pieces of this case I wasn't aware of, there's still going to be a boatload of people who say, nah, right? And I think what's probably most painful for you both as well as Jussie is that it's a lot of people saying now who look like him, you know, who share the same skin tone. And these people, I'm sure, would wonder if this turned out to be a hoax, if they think there is room for that and this was a hoax, is there anything that would make you guys believe it?
Shall I go first, Angela?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
okay. So, first of all, it's simply not believable, and this case boils down to a credibility contest. Who is most believable? What witnesses are most believable here? And when we look at the testimony over the last couple of days of the Osundairo brothers, all kinds of inconsistencies came up, saying one thing at the grand jury indictment, something else in the police statements, and something else at trial. So they were cross-examined effectively and thoroughly on their prior inconsistent statements. Not only that, they when the police, and this is really, I don't know if the public knows this, when the police searched the brothers' home, they found an arsenal, weapons of war, high-power tactical weapons, a Glock 45, 9-millimeter gun, a rifle, shotgun, countless rounds of ammo, cocaine, heroin, multiple computers, and multiple cell phones. So what's really happening in these brothers' lives? Are they really just fitness trainers? And the older brother is a convicted felon. I know a lot of brothers, black men, are, wrongfully convicted. In this case, I have reason to believe it's true. And that prior charge involved an assault, not unlike the assault against Jussie. They have, or the older brother especially, has had brushes with the law. I don't know if there was a deal here. I don't know if they were promised, no prosecution, if they testified against Jussie here. But clearly they are not credible witnesses for a number of reasons, all of which are too numerous to mention in this call. And Jussie will testify on Monday, and I think, and we'll see, who is the most credible witness.
Thank you. Jussie is testifying on Monday. Wow.
And I call on activists and church-going people and people of all races and backgrounds, to people who care about freedom and democracy and police terror and racism and homophobia. Show up and support.
Okay. I really appreciate. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Davis.
I just want to say something very quickly. Even if it were true, and I'm talking hypothetically, why would the Chicago Police Department devote so many resources, so much money to a case of a false police report? This makes no sense.
No sense.
And I think what is at issue again is the effort to legitimize the Chicago Police Department and police departments all over the country at a time when their legitimacy is being questioned by people all over the country and all over the world. So let's not lose sight of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And let's not lose sight of the fact that at the time that this attack against Jussie occurred, the Chicago Police Department was um, in the national, international headlines, a lot of negative publicity because the
Mm-hmm.
Laquan McDonald case had just concluded, where Officer Van Dyke was convicted of shooting Laquan McDonald 16 times, right? And other officers were convicted as well, and they were convicted of an elaborate cover-up where they
Cover up.
doctored documents and doctored videos and disappeared other videos. Um, and not only was that in the news dominating the national headlines, but the 1/2 billion paid out by the public in settlement funds for settling police terror cases against the police department, the federal investigation against the Chicago police. All of this was in the news, and Chicago was looking bad. Not just the Chicago Police Department, but Chicago was just really looking bad. And so then, Jussie's case comes along, and when they see that two of the attackers were black, of course, that's going to introduce a lot of confusion. They glommed on this case and used their very well-honed skills to cover up and frame up, and that racist, homophobic activist frame up was the result. And it shifted. Everybody's talking now about Jussie. They're not talking about the Chicago police and its misconduct and its crimes against humanity anymore. They're talking about how great the police department is. We solved this mystery of the celebrity who orchestrated his own hate crime.
Well, I wish we had more time to talk more, but I appreciate the time that we've had and all of these gems and information that you have been sharing with us. And once again, I want to say
Yes.
how honored we are to have you on this platform, Dr. Angela Davis and Dr. Fania Davis. And we're going to continue to talk about this case because it's important. It's important to us.
Yep.
And before you go, because I was born and raised in Oakland, Manzanita, Bret Hart, Oakland High, Merritt College. My cousin,
All right.
Evelyn Wesley, was the president of Merritt College. My sister, uh, 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 Regina Calloway, works in the Malanga Center.
Oh,
And
your sister's Regina Calloway?
yes.
Oh my God.
You
Oh my
know
God,
her?
I've been dancing with her for decades.
Wow.
Oh wow! Okay, see, Fania,
Shutting
they
you
don't.
down, Sway. You're not the
Okay,
famous one, Sway.
okay, that's
Shout out
what's
to
up.
G Life, NZO Khalifa.
Khalifa,
Hey.
I
yeah,
love
that's.
her. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm her youngest brother. And
Okay.
and with
You
that
come from
said,
a wonderful family.
well, thank you. So do you. So, with that said, I wanted to get your take real quick. What do you think the state of the union in Oakland is from your lens?
Well, Oakland has a
Angela, you
lot
want
of
to
problems.
take a pass at that?
Sure.
You want to take? Okay, Fania, you're more involved in local politics
Yeah.
Here in Oakland.
Yeah, well,
But
the
I
first
just
thing,
want to
of course,
say,
that comes
I
to
just want to
mind
say
is
that I really love Oakland.
We're
Oakland has
not going to we're
just
not going to go through the latter part of
has
this interview. Chris, we're dealing with the local situation in Oakland. You've heard from Angela Davis and you've heard from Fania Davis, two wonderful human beings. For me, Fania is an old friend. Knew her well back in the early days of the movement. Brilliant woman. And they're and lifting up Jussie Smollett, who was on the television series called Empire, uh, and with some very distinguished actors. And I think he lost that role because of this particular incident. But at any rate, uh, we're going to continue our broadcast, and we're going to do a few minutes. We have another video, and this one is an interview of Angela Davis discussing the harrowing situation that she went through as an activist uh, under investigation by the FBI and Mr. J. Edgar Hoover, who was uh, anti-communist, but also an anti-civil rights leader. He's the one that did undercover work and tried to destroy the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He worked for 8 different presidents, and the folks loved him. Richard Nixon loved him. Others loved him for some reason. But anyway, now we're going to look at a video with an interview from Angela Davis. So only a few minutes of it.
A lot of nostalgia swirling around about 1968. What is your most nostalgic moment? What was the high point for you of that year?
Well, I like to think that I'm not so much influenced by nostalgia, but I think historical memory is important.
But everyone has a bit of nostalgia,
Yes.
even you, surely.
Well, that's
Okay.
probably
All right.
true. 1968 was probably the year in which more happened in my political life than any other year I have lived, and I've lived many, many years, of course. Um, I'm thinking about the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. I was involved in an organization called SNCC at that particular time. I had been involved in the Black Panther Party that same year. And later that same year, I joined the Communist Party, so that there were major shifts in my own political life. But of course, everyone associates the student uprisings in Paris, and of course the largest general strike probably in the history of capitalism that happened in May 1968. But there were also uprisings happening in black communities throughout the country in response to the assassination of Dr. King. 1968 is an important year for me because it's the year during which, or the time during which, an emergent feminist consciousness, not so much gender separate from other issues, but an emerging consciousness of the interconnectedness of racism and capitalism and sexism, of course.
And do you think 50 years later, uncannily, we might be living through another such moment? Me Too, Black Lives Matter,
Of course.
left-wing and right-wing politics, one could argue at the extremes competing with each other.
Well, of course, it's interesting. History never replicates itself. But I think that what we are witnessing today are some of the fruits of the struggles that are associated with 1968. Certainly the emergence of a worldwide feminist movement, the women's resistance to the election of Donald Trump and all that that has meant, and creating a kind of global solidarity against the Trump administration and the militarism and the racism that it entails.
Is it the fruits of what you were trying to do in 1968, or is it an indication that what you were trying to do hadn't come to fruition, hadn't actually reached a conclusion, was unfinished business?
Well, I think we've learned a great deal since 1968. In 1968, many of us who were involved in radical movements really believed that the revolution was around the corner. And of course, there were major shifts happening all over the world. The African Liberation Movement, the Cuban Revolution, the Vietnam War. We were convinced that the world was going to change, and we were going to be a part of an anti-capitalist, anti-racist revolution. Our awareness of gender was not as complex as it could have been, as it should have been, as it is now. So I think today we are witnessing a certain continuity between the consciousness of the 1960s, 1968. But this is a period in which certainly women are on the rise, and that's very exciting because women were pretty much in the background in 1968, with the exception of a few individuals and a few movements.
I've spoken to quite a few members of Black Lives Matter and also the Me Too movement who said actually really very little has changed since 1968. you know, the clock stopped, moving forwards for us. That's why we have to go through this struggle again. Do you think they're right, or is that too negative a view?
Well, in a sense, very little has changed. It's interesting. I was reflecting on the fact that when I learned about the assassination of Martin Luther King, I was in the process of printing a poster about a young black man who had been killed by the police in Los Angeles.
The Trayvon Martin of 1968.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So in that sense, little has changed.
Has it got worse, perhaps?
I don't know whether it's gotten worse. I think our consciousness has grown, and there's been more media and social media attention to what has been going on since the era of the immediate aftermath of slavery. But what I think has changed is the understandings, the consciousness, and I think that feminism has a lot to do with this. And when I say feminism, I'm not speaking of mainstream feminism. I'm not speaking of the feminism that has been represented by figures like Hillary Clinton. I'm talking about a feminism from below, a feminism that has been generated by women of color, black women, Latina women, Muslim women, Native American women, one that emphasizes the interconnections of all social justice struggles and the fact that one cannot consider gender aside from race and class.
So you have this interconnectivity, and then at the same time you have a president of the United States, democratically elected, who is openly misogynist. Some would accuse him of being racist as well, although these, of course, are all charges that he denies. But that tells you something, doesn't it? That on one hand you have this consciousness that's moved in one direction. On the other hand, you have half of society saying, we reject that.
Well, it's not half. And I don't think Trump was democratically elected. The majority of people who...
Well, he won the Electoral College. I mean, by the rules.
Yes, but when one considers that the Electoral College is an institution rooted in slavery that was designed during the era of slavery to guarantee to slaveholders and to states with a small white population and a large slave population the kind of federal leverage they wanted. So,
but even allowing for that, I mean, and the Electoral College is a strange anomaly, and Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by a whopping 3 million. Even allowing for that, the fact that Trump is president of the United States of America with the views that he holds, that he's proud of in public, is astonishing, is it not?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We all continue to be incredulous that someone like Donald Trump can occupy the highest office
But what does that tell you about American society, that this has happened?
Well, I do not believe that he represents, his administration, his ideology, his strategies represent the will of the majority of the people. We have to consider that relatively few people actually go to the polls, not even half of all of the people in the US. And so many people did not vote because they didn't see a significant choice between the two candidates. So the election of Trump is the product of a crisis in the electoral system. And
we're getting right down to the end. And to the end of this video, we're getting right down to the end of the show. And both of these videos can be found on YouTube. These are not the videos that the Richard James Show produced. We borrowed and we over to accents some of the issues. This particular video was taken near the end of the Trump administration, probably one of the most racist administrations that this country has ever seen, next to Woodrow Wilson and some of the other racist presidents that we had. Just to kind of give you a view, these are the Davis sisters. Angela Davis, one of the greatest female activists we've ever known. Her sister Fania Davis, who's equally as capable, equally as dedicated, and has not had the notoriety. I knew her personally. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. She's a brilliant woman. along with her brilliant sister. We are very, very happy to have this video to share with you some of the things. Now, like I said, uh, when you know who you are, you know what to do. We are African Americans trying to lift up what they call the bloodstained banner. We now have other organizations, Black Lives Matter. And the thing about it, remember that Black Lives Matter, even though it's Black Lives Matter, is probably as many whites that are involved in Black Lives Matter as there are blacks. And that's a fact. And Black Lives Matter is in Australia, they're in the UK, they're around the world, and not just in this country. So I have some hope. I'm going to lift up positive things. I'm going to push a love of who we are, our history, our background, but also a love for all people, history of all people. Uh, we got a situation here, Jussie Smollett, which is a brilliant young man. He happens to be homophobic, shall we say, homosexual. I don't lift that up. I really don't. I'm sorry. Hey, I don't. But I do lift up his right to be who he is and to do what he does. And he doesn't need to be discriminated against because of homophobia. He should not be discriminated because of racism and discrimination. And now his trial is over. And he was convicted of 5 of those charges. It was 6 charges altogether. He was convicted of 5. Um, I'm waiting to see exactly what his sentencing would be. But yes, they tore him down and tried to destroy him. He was a brilliant actor, a brilliant actor. So is his talented sisters and brothers. But we always have to fight for what we want, for what we have, and we need to, regardless of our differences, need to stick together and try to lift up these individuals and be supportive of them. And that's where I'm at. I support Jussie Smollett. I support uh, uh, anyone, the Davis sisters and people who are trying to do a positive kind of thing. And again, near the end of the show, my folks, I always like to lift up my little, but very, shall we say, positive business down in Lebanon, Lebanon, Pennsylvania. This is a picture of some of the statues and oils and original paintings that we have down in Lebanon. And we stretch our hands out. Yeah, we need you. We need you to come down. Look at the African clothing that we have. Look at the oils. Look at the 4 or 5 foot giraffes that we have. Come down and get something positive. You will not beat our prices anywhere. Don't forget it. You will not beat our prices anywhere. We don't try to make it all with oneself. So come down and see us, and then we will make sure that we take care of you and do the things that we are supposed to do. Now, this getting back to the end of our show. Angela Davis is in her 70s. I think she's about 76 or 77 years old, uh, and she's still doing it. And she's now getting some of the recognition that she should have gotten a long time ago. But these people are still very active within their community. Uh, I think that Fania is located somewhere in California, and Angela, I know, has been involved. I think in Southern California, but they are really involved in trying to bring about change within our country. Now we got a lot of issues going on right now. We were blessed at one point to have a black president who did what he could to bring about some change, but there's a situation where one man can't do it, and he has to have the support of other individuals in order to get it done. We currently have a Democratic elected president, Mr. Joe Biden, and I'll be quite frank with you, up to date. I think we need to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and what they're trying to do. There are some issues and problems that we need to be concerned with, but they need us and we need them. Certainly, the things that he's trying to do is very positive. I'm a little disappointed at the press that's trying to see to me trying to destroy Joe instead of trying to support him and trying to lift him up. We finally have a president that got good common sense. He's 79 years old. I'm 80 years old. So he's a year younger than I am, but yet his mind is clear, and he's still trying to bring back the reputation of our country. We lost that on Trump. We lost this positive lift up America reputation. He supported, if he did not encourage, the attack on the Capitol of the United States. Unbelievable. Come in and to break windows, destroy. 5 individuals lost their lives in an attack on the Capitol of the United States. Where if we had a positive president, someone who believed in bringing us together with all of the kinds of uh, instruments we had that could have brought that down. We had the Air Force, the Marines, the United States Army, all those things located very, very near the Capitol. For God's sake, for over 3 hours, we allowed the Congress to be attacked with the support of the President of the United States. I think that is absolutely horrible. That should never happen again. But one thing Biden has said that the only way you can change that is at the ballot at the poll. But Mr. Biden, your attorney general has to do what he has to do also. If he has the power to bring charges, he needs to bring charges. This man is lifted up a lot all over the country and got millions of Americans believing that he won the election. And how sad that is. Where common sense, with all of the cases that have been brought up throughout the country, common sense will let you know that Joe Biden won that particular election. And if Trump had won that election, I would support Trump and his presidency. When he was in president, I wanted him to succeed because I knew that if he did not succeed, we would not succeed. So we got to support the current president and the current vice president. We are blessed to have two brilliant individuals, two attorneys. Joe Biden grew up not in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where he was born, but he grew up in Claymont, Delaware, 5 miles from Chester, Pennsylvania, my hometown. And people know him. Uh, People loved him. Joe Biden was the kind of guy that not put himself up better than other folks, and he has a real interest in the common man. He has an interest in making sure that everybody is taken care of, kind of like old Theodore Roosevelt. Only I think he was a lot more positive and less racist as some of the policies of Roosevelt. I think some of the policies were just terrible. But Joe Biden is lifting up the bloodstained banner. Let's lift him up. Let's support our president. Hey, and thanks a lot, Chris, for getting me out of trouble earlier. I had a few technical difficulties on this computer kind of thing, and our technician and our station manager is always there to keep us on track. I really God bless you, and God bless your dear family, and God bless America, and God bless all of the individuals that tune in to listen to the Richard James. So long, and hallelujah, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. And thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let us hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.
The Voice 17104.com.